Hello and welcome to our showing. I'm Ben.
And I'm Scott.
That's right, we're doing our final episode without Bo this week. This is Scott, who has replaced him for a couple of weeks. He's your old friend, the editor extraordinaire. Say hi, Scott.
I'm back, baby.
Yeah! What movie are we doing this week? Wait, you did something very nice. You're going to do the review instead of me, because this is a film that I did not understand at all. I had no idea what was going on. I'm hoping that you could give me some sort of guidance in this. We saw High Rise.
So when you're near me, darling, can't you hear me? SOS. The love you gave me.
Set in the 1970s, although you may not quite realize it at first, High Rise is a social surrealist film directed by Ben Wheatley and is based on a novel by the same name by J.G. Ballard. Just to put into context what kind of story we're dealing with, Ballard also wrote the novel Crash, which David Cronenberg adapted into the 1996 film about a group of people who gain sexual pleasure from car crashes. That said, this is a different kind of strange. The story follows Robert Lang, a physiologist who has recently moved into a luxury high-rise apartment block that provides all of its tenants with upper-class amenities, encouraging them to never have to leave. However, the utopian ideals of the high-rise are not quite met, resulting in tension between the classes separated by the architecture. Seeming sometimes more like a theatre production than a film, the story highlights the follies of the upper class and what happens when excess and autonomy hit their limits and collide in a violent, sex-occupied, smoky room with traces of cocaine and paint. Tom Hiddleston as Lang is peculiar and entrancing, with other great performances from Sienna Miller, Jeremy Irons, and Luke Evans. Whilst being somewhat inaccessible, the allegories I think were presented cleverly, and the use of architecture to explain the dynamics of the characters was well presented. If you're expecting to head into this film and not be challenged, then maybe this might not be the film for you. But if you enjoy trying to pick out meaning in semi-cryptic visuals and dialogue bordering on hyper-reality, then this would be a film well worth watching. Overall, I'm giving High Rise 3.5 stars.
When you're gone, how can I even try to go on? When you're gone.
I'm glad you said that it's a film to be pulled apart, because it's not a film to be enjoyed, is it? It's
I think it depends what you enjoy in films. It seems very much like it was taken from a novel, which it was. Like a lot of those ideas of excess, you kind of like they're ideas that you see a lot in literature, maybe not in film so much.
And I can imagine it working so well in a book. If you read in a book that it's a character going through madness, essentially.
You can really get inside their head.
And you don't know what's real. But when we're shown... Okay, to me, what I took out of this film was the power goes out and everyone goes crazy.
Yeah, I mean...
Whilst the outside world keeps going. Is that it?
I think that's the main plot progressor. Like, that pushes the plot along. Is the power outages and people then going a little bit stir crazy. Well, more than a little bit stir crazy.
And see, I got that, but then I walk out and I'm like, was that what it was about? I don't know.
Like I said, I think there's some allegories in there of classism, and because, you know, you have the people at the top of the high rise who are clearly a class above the people below. And as the power outages go through, they're affected more on the bottom floors than they are on the top floors.
Until eventually it gets up to the rich people at the top.
Yeah, which starts affecting everybody. And this whole building's like this kind of organism that's affecting everyone and driving them slowly insane.
So sorry, I didn't do a spoiler sound as is tradition. What I'm going to do is the spoiler sound here is going to be Bo laughing. Because it's the last episode of These Away, I'm just going to use this little sound effect one more time. Oh, thank you. That's a spoiler sound. Yes, that is our fallen friend Bo. He'll return soon.
As in, we're now spoiler filled.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. That was quick.
Because I can't do anything about it without I can't talk about it without talking about later bits.
You want to get into the minutiae of it to try and unpack it.
What you were just saying a second ago, I was thinking there was one moment that the film did quite well. It's that everything's going crazy inside the high rise, and then it's 2/3 of the way through the film, and suddenly you see that construction work is going on outside. It's a giant neon sign that says, you thought this was a dystopic world. You thought the whole world was fucked up. But no, it's just the high rise.
Yeah.
Good work, film. That's the only moment where I understood the red herring that they were giving.
Right, okay.
Where there was crazy shit happening all the way through the film. That's the only time where I was able to unpack why I saw that craziness.
Ah, right. Everything else sort of felt a little bit disconnected and just kind of like, oh, well, this is the bit where this happens, and this is
Or
the bit where this
two-dimensional,
happens.
maybe. So supermarket sequence.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of scenes where they go to the supermarket and people at the supermarket are continuing about their day jobs, working as the cashier behind the register, but people are rioting and pulling apart the supermarket around them. These people are not acting like you would think people would act in those situations.
It is that sort of hyper-realism where it's like I guess hyper-realism is sort of when things are almost so realistic that you can't tell the difference between what is fictional and what is reality. I've probably totally butchered that. And it's like a different thing in literature than it is in art and then it is in like psychology and everything from there. But I think that sort of shows that because all these people are going stir crazy inside of this high rise, but it's presumed that the people working at the supermarket don't live there. They come to the supermarket to work. So in that sort of sense, it kind of makes sense that they're not going crazy with everybody else. Do you know what I mean?
I assume they did live there because it was it was like a terrarium.
Yeah.
It was its own little ecosystem.
Yeah, all self-contained. Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility.
But then again, doesn't Tom Hiddleston, he's not crazy in the beginning. He's going about his day job just like these people at the supermarket are going about their day job. Maybe we're seeing them at the moment halfway to insanity.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to think that what is happening around them is real. No, wait. No, where they're trying to think that everything around them is normal. That's
right,
what I'm trying to get.
That's their sort of new normal. And they sort of, there's a couple of points during the film where you realize that he really is the fish out of water in this situation. Like there's a moment in the film where one of the other characters says to Lang and notes on how he's this outsider and can kind of traverse this environment a lot more easily because he's an outsider, because I think he's a physiologist who comes in, he was living somewhere else. The only reference that you get to anything from his backstory is the photo of him and his sister, and it's like this, like them posing, and the only thing you see in the background is like these bushes, like green trees and things, which like you don't see any of during the film because we're just stuck in this concrete jungle. So it kind of implies that he's coming from, like, he's very much an outsider. And there's that scene where they have that ball or party, and Jeremy Irons' character, I think, invites Lang, Tom Hiddleston's character, to this party, and he turns up and he's wearing like a black suit, skinny black tie, like looking just very suave, but then walks in and every's
wearing like, Victorian era,
wearing like
Elizabethan style outfits.
It almost looks like a painting. Like he stands out so much, and I think that really just establishes him as an outsider, which I think is why everybody's going crazy by the end of the film, but he's sort of going a different kind of crazy.
That scene there, I think that's a good example of where it's so two-dimensional in that you can imagine other films showing it in a more naturalistic way, of where the character walks in and you are able to show that they're an outsider. Maybe through something subtle, like he brought the wrong wine.
He also did bring the wrong wine. That also did happen.
Yeah, but like a normal, real-world way of doing that.
Yeah.
By having them look so different and Victorian era and having them act so pompous and so they're not people at that stage.
Yeah.
All the actors in that scene are props now to put forward this point that he doesn't stand out.
Yeah. See, I think that was probably intentional. And I find it interesting that you see them as two-dimensional characters, because usually if you say something's two-dimensional, it's like, well, they're obviously fictional. It's like obvious fiction, which kind of comes back to this thing that I'm talking about with hyperrealism, where you don't know where this is the real world, and like this is like it's almost gone so far that it's become a parody of itself, that it's like a fictional thing, which like in that scene, like I totally agree, it seems fictional. Like somebody makes a pompous joke about him looking like a something, and like literally everybody in the room laughs. It's like, well, they said it so quietly that not everybody would have heard it, but the whole room's laughing at him anyway.
Yeah, it's very theatrical, very over the top. You get that idea instantaneously. Like you get that from one frame. As you were saying, it looks like a painting and you can get that whole story. But then there has to be a reason why they've chosen the Victorian era stuff as the outfits to make him stand out. For example, why didn't they choose modern clothing that looked completely different to him? Like, would the scene have worked the same way if they were all in grey suits and he was in black?
Ah, right. I see what you mean.
A more normalizing of the same thing. Why is it so far over the top?
Why? Yeah.
Or
Why is
that era? I start to question why that specific choice was made.
What I took it as was a real representation of high society, like at its peak, to kind of get that sort of point across that these people have a totally different set of ideals than he does. By the time it gets to the end of the film, everybody's basically tearing each other apart, and Lang is in his own apartment just painting everything grey. But yeah, I think that works well to like further separate him to everybody else, because it's almost like coming in as an outsider when everything falls and goes to shit. He doesn't fall quite as far, whilst like all of these elite people living at the top of the high rise have just become total savages and are just locked in rooms having sex with each other and just all these things that you would otherwise associate as really low activities.
Okay, so you're saying he's the one character that doesn't fall as far as everyone else because everyone else is more incestual inside this high-rise.
Yeah, the only other group in the film is there's a lot of the women with children who are on the lower floors, and they're like boarded up down the bottom in this dark sort of room where they're huddled around a barrel with, that they've made a fire in, and they're not really going insane as much as they are trying to
survive.
Whilst, all the people that were living up at the top of the high rise have just gone completely insane.
So he's slightly different to the other characters, and he doesn't go as crazy as quickly. He starts to go crazy when he's painting his room grey. So he starts to fall from grace, and he starts to lose a little bit. And I mean, I guess that's the approach to the Immo's Cave, right? Where the hero loses all their friends and they have to go. It's Luke Skywalker going into the cave, confronting his villain, turning into what he might not want to be, and then coming out of it, and he's recovered. I guess that's what that bit's trying to be.
Yeah, I guess. Although it's almost a reversal of that, in that he goes in saner than when he comes out. Although, I mean, it's all just a matter of perspective. Like, I think he's still by far the sanest person in the building. So
the painting the room grey is a visual way of showing that he's focusing on something that he shouldn't focus on.
Yeah.
Whilst the world's going to shit around him, he's focusing on on the small things in life that will ultimately disappear and it's not his. It's not even really his. He's trying to claim that room as his own.
It kind of showed the skewed priorities that he has and that everybody else has in the high rise, because there's a scene where everybody's looting the supermarket, which is probably one of my favorite scenes, particularly because one of the guys that lives incredibly high up in the high rise comes in and is sort of noting about how he's never looted anything before and how do they do it. And you see that he's holding like a masquerade mask on a stick. It's like he's not covering his face with it, but it's kind of like he just thought he'd bring it just in case he had to hide his identity. Like they couldn't tell who he was. Which I enjoyed thoroughly.
I enjoyed the looting scenes for the frenetic camera work and the crazy stuff happening. Yeah. At that point, the over-the-topness became really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. And Lang ends up getting in a fight with somebody because he's taking this paint that nobody in their right mind would want. Like, he wants it for a very specific reason, but then because it's just like that, take everything, like everything is valuable, these like other two guys like try and take the paint off him, and he just absolutely loses it, and then like just starts beating the crap out of this guy who's trying to take the paint from him. Just like, why do you want this paint? Like, I want this paint for a very specific thing that you just want it because it's there. And
because I want it. Because I'm taking it. Yeah. You want to take it.
Yeah, which like totally frustrates him. So like, even in that scene, I think he's quite sane. He's doing things for rational purposes.
My question is, how did he come out the other side healed, better? What was he at the end of the film?
I'm not sure that he
wasn't at the start.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he necessarily was healed. He was definitely a different kind of person, but I mean, that might have just been as much the new environment they were now living in. At the start of the film, we get a glimpse of what the end of the film looks like after all the chaos has happened. And he's saying
in a flash forward that had me really excited as I watched it. That opening, that cold open was great. I'm like, this is the type of movie I want to see.
I'm sure you loved the trailer, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff in the trailer.
Yeah, I loved it. But then once the film started to get going, no, not at all. It's one of those flash forwards where it just lies to you about what the film's going to be about. It set my expectations completely wrong. I expected an I Am Legend meets Judge Dredd in that tower. It misled me.
Oh, it did?
It was like beer goggles.
Maybe you've seen too many of the same type of film where they jump forward to the end. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to get a nice linear ride straight to the end of the film, and everything's going to make sense. Nobody's going to throw anything at me that I'm going to be like, what the fuck? But at the start, they do note, because there's Lang is doing like a third person narration, which I'm guessing sort of comes from the book. They're talking about, well, Lang felt this way and blah, 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 blah. And they do note that he was in that section, and when Tom Hiddleston is doing the voiceover explaining about Robert Lang, the guy that he's playing, he says Lang was more at peace with himself because so many of the people in the high-rise were out of the way now. It kind of just implies more that he's now reached this point because the high-rise has settled, as it were, and he can sort of move forward in his life there. So I'm not sure that it's entirely change of him going in one state and then coming out as another. I think he's probably changed less than maybe you might think that he did.
That would be enough of a change. That if he goes into a crazy place, he goes into hell, and he's not affected by the surroundings.
Yeah.
That could be his arc, I guess, in that he goes in, he's affected by it, he starts to go crazy, he starts to fall from grace and turn into one of them. But then he says, no, I'm not that.
Yeah, it's really not that clear cut.
Exactly.
Which I don't mind. I totally don't mind that at all. Like, that's a part of the fun for me. Like, that does...
You and I have very different definitions of fun.
I don't think that frustrates me as much as it does you, but...
It does. Because what happens in the end? If I had to describe to you what happens in the end... So, like, what happens in the end there?
Okay, essentially, we've got Jeremy Irons' character, Royal, who's the architect who's designed this high-rise, and he lives right at the top.
Who needs a walking cane everywhere except for when he plays squash.
Yeah, right. He's playing squash, and yeah. Well, no,
and he's running around like a sportsman.
He explains that the more exercise he does, the less he is impacted by his
injury. Crap.
And so essentially, like he is at the top of the building, and everything's getting overthrown. The whole hierarchy of the thing is falling apart, and Jeremy
Irons' character is having this existential crisis where he caused everyone to go crazy.
I'm not sure that he really cares too much about it. It's sort of it's
this is one saving grace I was getting from the film. I was like, I understand this moment, and you're like,
no. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I just didn't pick up on that. His character is shot by one of the guys who lives on a lower floor, who was kind of leading the charge when it came to people just going absolutely bonkers. And then
Which actor
ends
was that?
up, that's Luke Evans, who plays Wilder, who's like a TV reporter kind of guy, works at the TV station, and he's trying to make a documentary about the high-rise. But he's also just a
character
massive...
that starts off as a douchebag.
Well, yeah, he's a douchebag all the way through, I think.
Yeah.
Like, because he's a womanizer, and he like cheats on his pregnant wife and beats women and
they
beats
do
men, and he's just a general terrible dude. So he gets killed by the harem of women in a scene where he's just getting stabbed over and over and over again. But they don't quite show it in a normal kind of sense. They show it through the lens of a kaleidoscope that this kid has. I think he's the bastard son of the architect, and is kind of like we sort of see the film sometimes through his eyes. And he's like, looking through this kaleidoscope as this guy's just getting like murdered in this like highly stylized sort of...
That's amazing that you almost said that verbatim for what someone said yesterday. I was talking about this film yesterday with someone, and she was saying that she can't handle violence in movies, any sort of like stabbing or any sort of that thing. And this film has a lot of it, but this film showed it in such a removed way that she was able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, a good thing for the film.
And I think that ties into the hyper realism in that people are dying, but it doesn't really look like people are dying. By
being so theatrical, it's allowing you to...
Yeah, which I think totally fits into the story where these people don't really know, like they've totally lost control. They don't really know what they're doing. And it's become so easy for them just to betray everyone else and to kill people. But yeah, these people don't know what they're doing. And so I think it's really cleverly presented in that way, particularly this scene where you see it through a kaleidoscope and there's all these women stabbing this guy, because it's almost like in popular culture we're so familiar with that psycho stab. It's almost like when we see somebody stabbing somebody like overhand into them, it's like it's not even real anymore. So I thought that was a clever way to kill him off in a way that kind of reflects the mentality of everybody inside the high rise.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yes. I will reluctantly...
Am I slowly convincing you of tiny little like bits
Yes.
in the film?
It's more the fact that you and my friend said exactly the same thing about that final moment of Wilder there.
Yeah.
That means that it does have some resonance with people. So maybe I should give that moment another...
The common man. Your average Joe, your average cinema goer.
No, if a lot of people are saying that moment stood out to them, maybe I should give another look in at that moment.
Can I just give you like a couple of really quick sort of things that I picked up on?
Oh, but before we do that, take me through what Hiddleston was doing in the end there.
Like right at the very end.
Throughout, from the moment when he comes out of his grey room and he's back to normalcy of sorts.
Yeah.
Or you've just described the plot of the end of the movie, and it has nothing to do with Hiddleston.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
I mean, I don't know. He's sort of, by the end of it, he's kind of on his own journey. I'm not too sure that I entirely understood his ending. I'd be really interested to read the book to see if you can get in his head a little bit more, which I assume you could, because literature's far better for getting inside somebody's head than films are, because you can literally say like he was thinking this as opposed to showing it through a scene where he's painting a entire room grey and then he's really satisfied and excited about it later. He's like, well, okay, what does that mean? So yeah, I'm not too sure. And it almost seems like a strange sort of mutiny by the end, where the only people left are, you see one of the characters whose wife was sleeping around with somebody and he ended up killing the guy who was sleeping with his wife, and he was happy about that. And Tom Hiddleston's character, Lang, who is seemingly just, well, I don't know.
Going about his normal business.
Yeah, a new type of normal, but with, rotted teeth. And there's a great line where he says but now it's time to sit back, finish eating the dog. And like it just very much shows that he's, it thinks everything's normal and thinks he's normal inside this environment, but maybe perhaps isn't.
Number one screenwriting thing is don't kill the dog. And they kill like 6 dogs in this film.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. And then there's the kid who saw that murder through the kaleidoscope, and he's sort of sitting atop what you would imagine like an umpire's chair in a tennis match, just sitting at the top listening to like a Margaret Thatcher quote, which kind of like...
in a very literal way of saying that he's going to be the new architect above everyone else and take over the legacy of his father.
Yeah, but maybe
that's the purpose of having him in the high-rise chair, right?
Yeah,
like,
I suppose
that he's
so, 'cause
overseeing everything.
Like he's on the roof. It's almost like he's above the high-rise.
Yeah.
But I think the Margaret Thatcher quote kind of ties it back into...
Oh, yeah, okay. I just Googled that. Hang on, I think this is the quote. There is only one economic system in the world, and that is capitalism. The difference lies in whether the capital is in the hands of the state or whether the greater part of it is in the hands of people outside of state control. Where there is state capitalism, there will never be political freedom. Where there is private capitalism, there may not be political freedom, but there cannot be political freedom without it.
And that totally threw me a little bit at the end of the film. I was kind of like, oh, okay, this seems like a bit of a late message to come in, like literally right at the end. But you can sort of see what they're getting at there, because she's talking about capitalism, and capitalism works for the people who are at the top of the hierarchy.
Yep.
For me, like you reading that just then makes me think that that's supposed to kind of ground the whole story in that it could be something that could have happened. Like this is just capitalism gone crazy, right? And in that it's sort of contextualizing the mindset that people have. I don't know. I might be way off the mark there, but that's pretty much all I can kind of get from that end quote.
I don't get what the quote's trying to say. Explain like I'm 5.
I think it's sort of just trying to set out those ideas that this situation inside the high rise can be fostered by society as a whole. Because in that quote, Margaret Thatcher's talking about something that affects everybody in the entire country.
Okay, at least I'm getting some solace from the fact that you're not understanding everything 100%.
No way.
We're getting inklings of things from here and there.
Yeah, the main difference is that I get an enjoyment out of the things that I maybe don't fully understand and go like, oh, okay, what could that be? Oh, maybe it's this. Maybe it's this. I'll never know. That's fine.
I'll never know is what troubles me. I hate that.
Here's a couple of things that I thought that I maybe did understand. So maybe
and you think these are going to sway me to go,
yeah,
okay.
Hopefully we can get a couple of moments out of you.
Let's see how high on the all meter they are.
Maybe this is like a really low level reading and I'm just not reading highly enough into it because the rest of the film is quite difficult to grasp and these things sort of seemed a little bit less. One, I don't know when recycling became a thing, but they do take note about this new thing called recycling, which he's like, oh, I've never heard of that. What is that? And that might just be me being ignorant, thinking that recycling's always been a thing, because in my lifetime, recycling has pretty much always been a thing. But it kind of explores
maybe
that.
in the 70s it started to come in?
Yeah, maybe. But I think her noting on that kind of shows the excess of everybody, because recycling is about looking forward and projecting what you're...
Renewable shit, reusing.
What society's going to need in the future. And these people aren't doing that at all. They're just entirely living to excess.
I actually thought that was alluding to the fact that Wilder was not caring about his surroundings. That's okay. I'll give that a mild R.
Number 2. I liked all the references that Royal, who was Jeremy Irons' character, was making to the building like settling, because the power kept going out. And he kept saying like, oh, like the building's still settling, which really builds it out as a character, because like the environment is really a character in this film.
Oh,
like
yeah.
The high rise, because it totally affects everybody. And the way that it operates then steers the plot and steers characters to do different things. And just him describing it as settling is almost like it's this environmental organism kind of thing. Like buildings don't settle with their utilities. That's not how it works. Somebody comes in and they fix it, or it wasn't made correctly in the first place. It's a very procedural sort of thing. Like if the water doesn't work, well, somebody shut off the water and somebody needs to contact the people at the water utility place to get it working. It doesn't settle, but it kind of sets up the high rise
as an organism,
as a living thing.
Maybe I would like the film a little more if I started to think of it as the building being Loki, the god of mischief, that it fucks with people to see what happens as like an experiment. It's the building is its own fish tank or rat maze.
That's a good way to think of it. Yeah.
So that there was never really a bad guy involved or no one responsible for things happening, but it was small instances of what would happen to people if this happened.
Yeah.
And the building makes that happen within itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it.
Maybe that's opening up a little. That's a little more awe for me. Okay.
Might get a rewatch out of you yet. Number 3, Helen, who's one of the women, the pregnant woman who lives on one of the lower floors, when they have like a birthday party for one of their kids, and there's like just thousands of kids in there, apparently. We see in her room, or like one of the kids' rooms, there's a Che Guevara poster.
Yep.
You know, like revolution.
Foreshadowing
the revolution that's to come.
Could that have been Wilder's poster?
Could have been. Actually, probably was. Yeah. That would make sense.
Especially considering how much he hates the authority and that sort of thing.
Okay, and number 4, the power going out is, for me, was just like a really quick, more accessible way of saying that there's a power struggle going on. Yeah? Does that resonate with you at all? Like the environment's affecting directly what's happening with the people, or mirroring, I guess, what's going on. Which, I don't know. I thought that was clever.
In our new reading, forcing situations upon people.
Yeah. Totally affecting how they're reacting within it. I don't know. I thought it was a little clever thing.
That one doesn't get any oars from me.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all I got.
Oh.
Those are all my little things that I noticed.
You got one good thing, one really good R out of there, which is reading that the building is as an organism.
And like, I just enjoyed the architecture of it. Like the building for the first, I think it was maybe 17 floors or something, was just going straight up. And that's where all the people who were in one class, like a lower social class, were living. And then the building kind of diagonally goes up. And so...
like a hand. It's one of the indexes. So you have the main body of the arm.
Yeah.
And then from there's the 5 arcs that come up.
And so essentially each floor up from there, those aren't equal either. Essentially, it separates those, saying like, well, the person that lives at the top of this is going to be at the top of the society and be all powerful and have the most power. And then every increment down until you get back to that like straight structure, everyone's going to be losing like a tiny little bit of power, but they're still above everybody else that's on those 17 floors below. And they do a very clever thing with the balconies being positioned so that the person above can see the person below, which I thought was very clever, because it's literally like looking down on the people below.
And also the implication that the people lower down aren't looking down on each other means that as you get higher up, you start to focus on the things that you shouldn't be focusing on, such as looking at the people who are slightly below you.
Yeah.
Whereas the people at the lower floors, they're not looking at the people beneath them.
Well, yeah, it's a very literal interpretation of like you look up and you want to climb.
Yeah,
It's heavily bathed
it's
in
two-dimensional.
metaphor. I don't understand how it can be two-dimensional and just be like jam-packed with metaphors. That seems like those two things don't really line up.
Really? Okay.
Two-dimensional seems like there's not enough there.
Or it's done for only one reason, linearly. This comes back to the Victorian era clothing. When I say two-dimensional, I just mean that it's done for one purpose.
Right, okay.
And it's to show that he's different to them. Yes, there are metaphors. Yes, there are allegories. And yes, there are things that you can pull out of there and read your own meanings into. I guess you have to in this film. This is a film that you have to read into. You can't just watch and understand. You have to make your own meanings from it.
Yeah.
But without another purpose, to me, that's two-dimensional. It's like having the evil character, and he's evil. But you have to interpret why. Without being developed or without explaining that, it's linear.
Right, okay. And then makes it two-dimensional because it's only serving one purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. I think maybe that this is just a different style of film where there are more purposes in there, but they're just not as easily accessible, which is very indicative of the source material being a book. And like just a fun fact, this was written in 1975 and it was optioned, as in the rights to it were bought, in 1976. And the producer of this film has been trying to get this film made for 30, 40 years. And a lot of critics of the book have said that it's unfilmable, which I think you would maybe agree with at this stage.
No, I find it interesting that it would not have been a period piece back in the 70s. It was done at the time to sort of show a dystopic version of their own time period.
Yeah, which ties into that reference of capitalism at the end, because it's very much a product of the time.
And it explains the futuristic retro nature of the whole film.
Yeah. You know what I would love to do? I'd love to come back and do a mini episode after reading the book. That'd be great. I would love that.
You're speaking my language here. I'm down for that.
I think that would be a really good way. Like, it's almost like reading an early draft of the script or something, you know?
Maybe we could also review Kill List.
Oh, yeah.
The other film directed by Ben Wheatley. Yeah. And when I saw that he directed High Rise as well, I went, oh, that makes a lot of fucking sense.
I don't know. I think I have it. I think I've got it somewhere around. So maybe I'll go for a dig and I'll see if I can find it.
And I might rewatch Kill List, goddammit. And we can come back for a little half episode to see if that explains High Rise anymore.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Yeah. But I'm going to give it my rating.
Yeah, here we go.
I really don't know what to give it.
Can you give it a rating and then maybe a perspective rating?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm giving it 2. I'm giving it 2 for the moment. It did look great. It looked like a film of its time. Mm-hmm. Some of the handheld cinematography, some of the stuff that was happening within it looked great. Mm-hmm. There were certain moments like characters falling from the building that just looked amazing. But ultimately, it wasn't very enjoyable for me. But if I read the book, if it makes more sense, if I'm able to take more out of it, the perspective rating would be 3, in that it's very memorable.
Okay.
And there's a lot to talk about in it.
You still haven't hit my 3.5.
Oh, no.
We'll see. Maybe after the book.
2 for the moment. I'm staying with 2.
I'm hoping that my 3.5 will get to at least a 4 after reading the book. I have a feeling that it will.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, until then, thank you for joining us.
Hey, no worries. Anytime. I'm looking forward to coming back for this now reading novel review.
It'll be the first book. This will be great.
Paving the way. I love it.